And the movie opens up with a young Nora climbing to the top of a mountain with her father. Suddenly, she slips down a hill but manages to catch her footing and join her father, who's already reached the top of the mountain. There, her father reminds her of a troll fairy tale that he used to tell her when she was younger. The story began with 13 trolls who got drunk at a wedding and lost track of time. And by the time the celebrations ended, the sun was beginning to rise. As soon as the first ray hit them, the trolls turned into stone mountains. At first, Nora doesn't believe that trolls are real, but her father tells her that she needs to believe that they exist. Only then will she be able to see them. And when she starts to concentrate, this is when Nora notices the faces of the 13 trolls on the mountain right in front of her. The scene changes to 20 years later when Nora has become an archaeologist. She, along with a group of explorers, were digging in a site to find evidence of the existence of dinosaurs. Her colleague informs her that their university is insisting that they come back and is threatening about pulling their funding since they haven't been successful in their quest. Nora tells them that she will not give up so quickly, that they should continue digging in the time that they have left. As they continue to dig, Nora's shovel hits something hard in the ground, and she discovers that they just found a dinosaur fossil. Elsewhere, heavy machinery is seen going inside the mountain while people are gathering outside to protest. The crowd tells the miners to stay out of the mountains, however, they ignore their pleas and continue with their task. The machinery starts digging and explosives go off by the mountain, and by the time nighttime falls, the workers go in and start digging. All of a sudden, they hear rumbling inside the cave, and assuming that it's an earthquake, everyone starts to run out, but the cave collapses on them, killing everybody inside. Meanwhile, at the Norwegian Armed Forces headquarters in Oslo, a group of officers begin to notice high seismic activity, which is coming from the mountain as their radars start to go off. The Armed Forces dispatches pilots immediately who take off toward it so they can retrieve the civilians trapped there. One of the pilots shows their commanding officer the visuals of the massive destruction in the mountain range, leaving everyone confused at the headquarters. They then contact the Prime Minister and fill her in on the situation. Her advisor, Andreas, jokingly points out that the indentations in the ground kind of look like footprints. The Prime Minister ignores his comment and tells him to contact geologists and archaeologists and other qualified personnel to assess the situation and come up with a strategy to make sure they can avoid any tragedy. Meanwhile, Nora and her colleagues were celebrating their findings when they see a helicopter approaching their site. A soldier gets out and asks her if she was Nora, and once she confirms her identity, he informs her that she's been called to Oslo due to a national emergency. When she arrives at the Armed Forces headquarters, she is taken to a top-secret meeting where experts present their opinions on what could have left the imprints. As soon as Nora sees the footage on the screen, she interrupts their conversation and tells them that what they're seeing are footprints. Just then, an officer named Sigrid enters the conference room to show them a video that she'd managed to recover from a civilian's cell phone. When Nora makes her pause the video in between, they notice what looks like a humanoid. Nora insists that it's something that has feet like humans because there's no other explanation for the footprints in the video. Impressed by her work, the Prime Minister appoints her as the scientific advisor for the operation. The scene changes to a remote area where an old woman and her husband were having tea when their house starts rumbling. They take shelter in their basement since they think the rumbling was caused by an earthquake, and once the rumbling stops, they come out of the basement and notice that their house has been torn apart. Meanwhile, Nora is sent to the location where she meets the couple who patiently answer her questions. The woman tells Nora that she'd heard howling before their house was ripped apart, and when Nora goes outside, she tells the soldiers with her that she can smell something strange in the air, but she's unable to recall what it is. A few minutes later, Nora tells Andreas that she has a theory and that they need to visit her father to get the answers. She warns him that her father has a very wild imagination and that he's kind of lost his mind. Soon, they reach her father, who's been living in seclusion. She tells him that something came out of the mountain, and she thinks that he might know what it is. He tells Andreas and Captain Chris that it has to be trolls that have been wreaking havoc. Then he asks Nora and the men to take him to the site so he can assess it for himself. Everyone gets in the helicopter, and Nora's father points at a hill where they should land the helicopter. He points at the map and tells Nora that the topography of the area is not really right. He once again starts to mention trolls, but Nora disregards him and tells him that he needs to stop talking about fairy tales. In the middle of their argument, Nora notices a troll's open eye behind her father, and everyone stares in shock, but quickly gets on the helicopter and manages to escape from the troll who had camouflaged himself within the mountains. Andreas and Captain Chris and Nora and her father then reach the headquarters, who had been made aware of the troll after Captain Chris shared a live video with them. Nora warns her father to not mention anything about the trolls or everyone will think that he's crazy, but he chooses to ignore her and insists that what they are seeing is a troll. An argument breaks out when no one believes him, and as a result, he's taken away. Nora asks the Prime Minister if they can have more time to investigate. However, the Prime Minister refuses her request because she thinks it's too dangerous. Nora tells her father that she's going back to dig for fossils, and her father tells her that they have to help the trolls because it's woken up to a world that he has no idea about, and he is surrounded by weapons that can scare him. Nora agrees and asks Captain Chris to take them along with him, and when the armed forces reach the trolls' location, they take their positions and wait for the trolls to reveal themselves. Sometime later, everyone hears rumbling and sees that the troll is walking toward them. Despite Nora's father's advice not to shoot, the soldiers begin shooting at the troll. Captain Chris notices that the attacks are not causing any damage and shouts at everyone to retreat and hide behind the tree trunk with Nora and her father. One of the soldiers near them begins to pray, and Nora's father points to the fact that the trolls can smell Christian blood just before the soldier is attacked by the troll who eats him. As everyone rushes to retreat, Nora's father walks toward the troll and tries to calm it down. Just then, Nora notices a tank turning toward the troll and begins shooting at it, causing the troll to retaliate and hit her father in the process. She rushes to him, but it was too late as he succumbs to his injuries. That night, Nora goes over her father's notes to find clues about what he may have known. The next morning, Captain Chris tells Nora that they're gonna continue following the troll and kill it, and then Andreas approaches her and gives a picture of a church to Nora. When she sees it, she immediately runs to the control room with Andreas and Captain Chris following her, and they tell the Prime Minister and the General that the trolls used to target churches because the church bells would bother them. She then tells them their plan and asks them to give her a chance to execute it, and meanwhile, the troll shows up at the amusement park, but before it can attack anyone, Nora and a few of the soldiers arrive at the park in a helicopter with the church bells attached to them. The sound aggravates the troll and he destroys 3 of the helicopters in the process, but he finally leaves the park. The news of a troll on the loose breaks and creates nationwide panic. The Prime Minister sends Nora back after telling her that the situation is not under her control, and she then addresses the nation and tells them to take care of each other while they try to get the situation under control. Andreas and Nora try to exit Oslo when Nora suddenly realizes that the royal palace is the troll's home. She asks Andreas to turn around and head to the palace, and when they reach the palace, they're escorted by a man named Sinding, who's responsible for making everyone think that her father is crazy and that his theories are nothing but fairy tales. He then takes them to a tunnel that is filled with the dead bodies of trolls, and he tells them that when Norway was christened, everything that went against the faith was killed. He also goes on to say that the palace belonged to the Troll King, and all trolls were killed except for the king's child, who was lured into the mountain and trapped inside. She suddenly realizes that the troll is the new king and that he's making his way to the palace. She also realizes that light can kill the troll when her fluorescent light begins to burn the fossils. She comes up with a plan and contacts Captain Chris to help her execute it, and at the same time in the headquarters, the Prime Minister tells the General to go ahead with his plan of using a secret weapon that had been developed by the military. Sigrid overhears the General and informs Andreas about it, who tells her to hack into the system and stop them from launching the bomb. She manages to override the system at the last minute, giving Nora and Andreas the time that they needed to start executing their plan. She starts driving toward Captain Chris and his men, who've been asked by Nora to set up. Andreas takes the cloth off the back of their truck and reveals the skull of a troll. When the troll notices it, he begins to chase them, and as they release the skull, the troll picks it up and begins to mourn for his lost family. The troll accidentally drops it, causing it to break. Aggravated, he begins to chase Nora and Andreas again, intending to kill them. The two of them jump out of the truck as soon as they reach Captain Chris and his soldiers, and Nora was about to get crushed by the troll when the sirens and horns start to go off, distracting the troll. Captain Chris then turns on the lights, causing the troll's body to start burning. The troll continues to moan in pain, causing Nora to feel bad about the fact that they're harming it, and this was why she rushes off to turn the lights off. She begs the troll to return to the mountain so that everyone would leave him alone, but before the troll can leave, the sun begins to rise and the troll's body withers away. Everyone at the headquarters watches as the troll dies, putting an end to the chaos. Nora stands near the troll as it turns to nothing but dust and rocks, and she's then escorted away as the media begins to take pictures of the dead troll. Andreas then asks Nora if she thinks that there are any more trolls alive, but she refuses to answer him, and the movie ends with rocks among the wreckage beginning to form another troll.